Just to set context, I think you are team AI. I was more team humans. You are very optimistic for AI in terms of the fact that that's going to be the most dominant intelligence on the planet. You said that AI is going to take away more than 50-60% of all jobs available.
Yeah.
My theory has always been when a job goes, a new job is created. Like we figure out something new to do.
Singularity is going to happen by 2045, which means we can live forever.
So what's happening with Neuralink then?
Neuralink is making us connect to a system already, right? It's not taking my brain, it's not taking my memories, it's just taking my impulses and it's able to read that and do something on a computer.
Does it interface with AI?
Not yet.
But you think that
Oh, very much.
we are going to have bigger gratification problems because I think we're going to get far harder things easier and better, and we will start now trying to achieve or go after things that are far bigger and beyond our reach. For example, travel outer space.
I'll tell you my secret wish.
To set context, we are back to completing our older conversation, which is basically on AI and all things product, which you couldn't finish. I just realized we recorded for 2 hours the last time, so it didn't feel so.
Yeah, really.
It felt like time just went by, but I think it was proper power packed. There was no time. There's nothing that we cut, I guess. So we left off on the note where I think, like I was just saying, the summary is you are team AI. I was more team humans. But you are very optimistic for AI in terms of the fact that that's going to be the most dominant intelligence on the planet.
I'll tell you my secret wish, right? Singularity, that means it's going to happen by 2045. At least that's what I've read. Could happen even sooner, which means our consciousness could be transformed into a computer. It can be stored, and which means we can live forever. That's the space I want to get to as soon as possible.
So you're saying 2045, huh?
2045.
It's interesting because 1945 is, or 44 was it, when the atom bomb was discovered?
44, I think.
44, right?
From the movies at least.
Yeah, Oppenheimer. But if you look at that, and I think that was the first message to the universe probably, that we elevated a step. We just graduated from a species standpoint, because when you went nuclear. And 100 years from then to then practically not be the same species anymore. Yeah. If that's true, that's crazy. I think
the way it's basically calculated, and I think so speed of computing is increasing year on year. It has a growth. The amount of space required to store information is also reducing, right? And by 2045, we'll be in a place where it can compute as fast as our brain and can store as much information as our brain does. So that's the point. But again, when this Moore's law, I think it's called Moore's law, when it was created, there was even the first computer wasn't like, it was just getting built. Now we have supercomputers which were 50 years ago now in our pockets, right? So imagine another 50 years of that and where we could be. So
interesting. So coming back to that point, right? So you said that AI is going to essentially, from now until then, probably just take away more than 50-60% of all jobs available. Yeah. My theory has always been when a job goes, a new job is created. Like we figure out something new to do. Because it's always happened, right? Since probably the 70s when computers became mainstream, at least in the West, and since here too, of course, a lot of workforce. Like imagine how many accountants companies used to have back in the day, right? Maintaining files and running from point to point. Remember, personal secretaries were a big thing. Yeah. Like now we still have EAs, by the way, and I think that's a very nice example where, at a larger scale, it's systems have got efficient. Like people like you and I probably don't need one, let's say. But if we were doing the same jobs we're doing now, that we were doing in the 60s or 70s, we probably would have an assistant, right? Yeah. It's a given. Without that, you can't function. Right. So that's changed, but still people do that. But it's, I think what the trend, or what you can take away from the fact that is that I think we are suckers for efficiency, right? So AI brings efficiency, and then we are like, oh, what if it's human plus AI? It's even more efficient. That's how we think. Fair. Like for example, we're using we're just experimenting this now with the podcast too. So we're cutting episodes down instead of making it long, because that's what works on YouTube, but audio is still the entirety of it. And we're using a lot of AI tools to auto edit and just see what it's like, right? Because what it gives you is volume. Yeah. And volume trumps algorithm, right? Yeah. It negates luck. So we're trying that and to see what comes out of it. Now that doesn't mean that we don't have our editors or don't use them. It's the model has been, let's use the workforce plus the AI and then just supercharge the output.
So let's take the editor working with the AI today. He or she would be doing it for a year. AI is learning, right? Now, AI can not just learn from this editor, but learn from thousands of editors using AI. The system has just gotten much better, right? So more of what the editor was supposed, the touch that the editor brings in, AI is able to adapt and learn and then improvise.
Sure. So the point, so I agree with you on that, but the difference would be that if you need something to be creatively done over and above, let's say for example, hypothetically that you need to change the treatment or the edit style, bring in a different effect, not even an effect, let's say a different kind of a color scheme or change the brand tonality of things, right? That I think is still a little far away. Sure, it could be a scenario where it's learning from maybe.
So, okay, Meta's new release that happened this week, there was a person who is making a dish in English, but the same person's voice along with lip movement is being used to do it in Spanish to target at a whole different audience. Right now,
but see the thing is that's still not creative, right? What it's doing is it's still binary. I think it's one. So great example, the 0 to 1 and 1 to 1. I think that's 1 to 1 because you're taking a language, you're translating it using.
What I think fundamental understanding of an AI is the knowledge that it is using right now exists in the past. We as humans have the ability to also feel something from the future. Okay, like I'll give you an example. Okay, let's take a large meteorite coming towards Earth. AI does not know about it. Right? It will never be able to tell you what to do next.
Yeah.
Right? But because humans have that awareness, they are able to do something about it.
Right.
This is true in all use cases, right? Like, I know that a company acquisition is going to happen, and I know that my competitor might become more stronger, and this information is not available with AI, and it is unable to start making changes within the system to counter it or to like
to
this thing, right? So what's missing? Like the awareness of AI is kind of missing, right? You give it eyes, you give it ears, and I don't know if I will go with smell and touch, but imagine you're giving it eyes and ears. It's able to get more data, process it, and what it's doing is it's not just processing it. It's not just copy pasting data, right? What it's doing is it's learning, and that is a very human thing.
So exactly. So every time it needs to learn, does it need a human input?
Today, yes.
Yeah. So exactly. So for example, the same example of the meteor, right? For example, if you say if you build a program to scan the stratosphere, let's say for example, right? It knows, for example, okay, from 0 to 40,000 feet in the air, I need to scan for any bodies entering or exiting or whatever it might be, and then you probably would ask it to expand, right?
Yeah.
And then give a command. From there on, you're saying probably on its own it will figure out next 40,000, then 40,000 after.
So imagine an AI is built to protect humans, right? It's today we have to define it slightly more in terms of how do you want to protect humans, right? But and as models keep getting better, they understand us much better. The new ChatGPT IO that's come out. So all this while, the intent was the AI to be able to produce an information really fast, right? So it had tokenized a lot of information, and it was easy for it to reproduce. Like the audio thing that we did, quite quickly it came up with a voice, right?
Yeah.
Now Google 1.0 that's come out, it is doing more meta thinking, right? It's looking at aspects that we haven't even entered into the prompt. Now take another 2 to 3 years of it, you're going to just tell an AI protect humans. Right? It's going to go into the field of medicine, it's going to go into the field of defense, it's going to go into the field of resources, and it's going to make sure that humans are protected. Right? So it's only a matter of time till we have the system enough for it to like seek information, understand it, learn from it, and then start giving out output. We've seen strikes of it from OpenAI's 1.0 model, but it's only going to keep getting better.
Got it. But so what it would do is essentially, from my takeaway is that if you needed 100 people to do something, probably now you need only 10.
Yeah.
Right? But you still need those 10, right? until and unless someone brings a model where you need maybe one.
Yeah.
That's further efficiency.
Yeah.
At some point, do you see that becoming zero?
Yeah.
So then would there be competition between your AI model for, say, video editing versus mine for video editing, and then seeing which one is better? Is it going to be like personal AIs that are offering solutions for you?
Good question. If it has been okay, so that look at it if there are open source models which you can host on your own servers, and everybody can afford it, then we all have the same power of AI that's available to us. But there is going to be systems that are going to be managed by, say, OpenAI, for example.
Right.
But these systems can provide immense value to users outside of their subscription as well, right? To give you an example, let's take YouTube videos. You already published a YouTube video, but it's how I consume YouTube video might be very different.
Yeah.
You are cutting it today because most users like me, right? But what if YouTube understood me and cut videos even if it's not cut?
So personalize it for you.
Personalize it for me. So these platforms will start playing a role where they understand each user, understand at what time, how much content I'm going to be listening to, right? So from a content, our AI might just be producing enough content, but it might be the platform that's slicing and changing language and putting a different brand or adding a different product because I am more keen in that product while you might be keen in another product, right? So imagine that happening at a personal user level, not just at the creation of the content, but also in the consumption of it.
Got it. My takeaway still is the fact that it's going to integrate with an individual very deeply, to the point where all personal taste, preferences, interests are going to be curated. It's like a filter, right, around you.
Yeah.
Anything that comes from the outside world is going to curate it for you the way you like it. But even then, so what will happen eventually is it's going to be like a phone, let's say. What a phone today does is it's access for you for everything in the world, the outside world. Some people use an Android, some people use an iPhone, but regardless, they do it differently. If you're in a tier 1 India versus a tier 3 India, you have different habits, but you still use a phone to consume those interests and habits, and that's how your life goes about. Don't you think that would be what AI does eventually, which is that it basically seamlessly fits into a human, acts as that filter, curates everything around it, but it does not change it could change the framework of society for sure, because we saw how much impact social media alone had, right, and how much phones had. So it's a no-brainer that would too. And tomorrow, if there's VR, AR and all of that taking off, then of course I think it's going to change everything. But it won't change society and its structure in a way where there's going to be only probably, like you were saying last time, 10% of the population that's employed, for example. It wouldn't be that level, right?
So I'm curious to find out what the rest 90% of the people are going to do.
So I think they would do what we just discussed, which is you would build your own AI tool, and then it's like a SaaS product, probably. I say you rent it out, or you lease it out, or you sell it.
But why my AI can do what your AI can do?
See, exactly. Now it's a difference between the two AIs. How efficient is yours versus mine? For example, maybe yours is better at helping people cook versus mine is better at helping people edit videos.
So are they made by the same company?
Maybe, maybe not. So what I'm thinking is, so look at cars, for example, right? In its peak, for example, people in the West, at least, people would buy cars and then they would pimp it up. They would do their own work, right? And then that became a great attraction. Like, for example, Koenigsegg still does it, where they create, I think, 10 cars and they're handmade. Right. And that's the lure about it. People want to go and buy that. Right. While there are so many other cars also out on the market. Right. Don't you think it'll be a scenario of that, something like that, where you're using AI through a human lens, and what the human is adding to the AI is the difference, and people come to buy that, and it's the same philosophy of what a brand is.
So my take is we still want to keep humans in the picture. Like we are forcing ourselves to keep human in the picture. If you're looking at it from a business perspective, right? Like say I'm a marketing company and I want to discover companies that are looking for my services. I want to provide them services and I want to retain them, and I want to sign contracts after I've delivered something. Why can't all of these aspects be done by AI? Right? Lead generation, communication, getting the project, content creation, doing it. You'll generate the content, you'll distribute it, you'll monitor it, you'll provide feedback, you'll iterate it. you'll reach company goals, and then you'll sign a retainer with them, and that continues. So what you've done is basically created a bot for that company that does marketing, right? Now the creation of that bot, if you're using an OpenAI, if I have access to OpenAI, and all the data is getting fed to OpenAI, then they will eventually have like a service that anybody can just leverage and start using, right? So that can mean it can wipe out companies, all types of companies at different scales, right? Like at different damage levels. But I do see that happening. What you're trying to get to, Saanand, is you're trying to keep humans in the picture. I'm trying to say from an economic standpoint, we don't need to keep them.
Okay, so I think great. So we can shift our argument to that point, which is, think of it this way, right? Policy makers, lawmakers, politicians, they can't afford mass unemployment, right? So they probably will figure out a way in which there's a limit. Like it's happening in Hollywood, for example. I think actors have signed a
petition,
thing, right? Petition, etc. And to an extent, that will happen. And to an extent, there'll be others who probably won't comply to it. And some levels of manipulation or usage of personal rights and image rights, right? Essentially, will happen. It's a no-brainer. But at a larger level, I don't think society can afford to have a scenario where AI is sort of cutting people out in a way where they are not able to provide for themselves and there's no livelihood. That becomes a problem. So even if that's the case, where like say we are hitting singularity and that becomes the future, I think they'll limit it, or rather they'll ease it in, where they'll say for over 25 years they'll make one change in law and then the next 25 the other, and then slowly let people buy into it.
The intent would definitely be that, right? Like make sure that people are still like voter bank is them, so it revolves around people. But what we need to identify is, say a country or a company does not follow, or say an actor doesn't. Take an old actor, take Amitabh Bachchan. Okay, now he wants to be a legend for life, right? Like even after he passes away, he might go and say, yes, use AI, use my voice, use my face, use me from the first photograph I have to the oldest, use me in every stage, every form, right? And make sure that I get loyalty rights for it. Now, if he does it, we are losing out on other actors who are not doing it.
Yeah. So the problem. So now that would only be a problem if the quality of what of the AI, what it's replicating Amitabh Bachchan, is of the same level as what the actor was.
Which it will. Like so, those are limitations that it can easily overcome, right? It's generating pixels today, like it's creating videos already today. So. Trying to get his style, his method, his format is not going to be too difficult, right? And he can simply say that if you're using me, don't use me for XYZ ads. You can't use me in such scenes, but the rest of it you can, and it's a license you just pay and you start using. Voices are already happening. 11 Labs, Speechify, where you have Snoop Dogg's voice. You can make him. He reads out my PRDs, right? It's awesome fun, but I actually end up listening to it. So, so his voice is now like AI voice. You can make it say anything you want.
Imagine how much Morgan Freeman's voice would be worth.
Yeah, I can't wait to get his voice. In fact, you can illegally do it, but you shouldn't. Whatever.
That happened, right, with Scarlett Johansson.
I don't think they ended up using her voice. They said it sounds something similar to.
Yeah, must have used her as a base to create.
To create,
Right. So again, right, coming back. So basically, the possibilities are endless.
Yeah.
But do you think humans will risk, shooting their own foot?
I think greed will drive it, and like, okay, if I have the machine, if I have the tool, if I have that capability available with me, say it can cure cancer, am I going to restrict it? No.
Yeah, because it's better to not cure it.
But there are doctors and lives, people who are spending 30 years trying to do this research. You're just taking their livelihood away. Is that fair? Right? So if you have the resource, you are going to use it to its most. It's not going to be, I can go bribe politicians, I can change policies because I have the resource to change the world. And it seems like a superpower, right? Like if you have a weapon, you definitely want to tell the world that I have the best weapon and you guys have to stay back. Now, every country, every organization is trying to get that weapon as soon as possible. It's going to be very difficult for, like, all these roadblocks will come, but it's really not going to slow them down because they have the resource, they have the capability. It's like holding back, and they won't hold back. Greed is going to let.
Right.
give us
See, but at the same way, right, there's a lot of things you can do today, but then due to risks at a larger level of society, you don't. For example, there are a lot more applications of nuclear power, right? But like if you watch that Bill Gates documentary, which came on Netflix a few years ago, I think he was trying to use nuclear to solve for waste management.
Yeah.
But he wasn't getting permissions because it's a slippery slope. The margins are thin. You could reconfigure the technology to actually cause damage, or it could go wrong essentially. Similarly, and as a result, governments are not giving permission, right? Even though it's actually
I
very
think
good.
right now he's gotten a couple of them.
I think
already
he's
started.
going. I think last I saw, I think he got one MVP. I think is that the deal?
I think 2 right now
Okay.
are running.
Right. So I have to read up again on it.
Yeah.
But I guess that there was a resistance, right? Basically. So there would be similar ones imposed in some level or the other. See, like, okay, let's look at it this way. If you have you been to Calcutta recently?
I haven't.
Okay, so I went for the first time like a couple of months back, and it took me back in time. Like I felt I was in the 90s, and it was all slow, and it felt like it was still in a city that is old. And I was talking to my colleague who's from there, and then I learnt about the fact that in the 80s there was an entire campaign by the Communist Party there to not adopt computers, because the widespread campaign was the computers are going to replace humans, the same narrative, and they vehemently said no. So I went to a tech park, which is like a tech park, let's say, but a very modern building, and I walked in and I thought, okay, like I'm used to going to like Prestige and Embassy and all that here, and I thought, okay, it's going to be all automated, go in, whatever. But I realized there was a line of people waiting at the reception. I thought, okay, fine, whatever. It's probably a little slow day. It's happened in Mumbai a couple of times to me, so I thought it's that. I walk up, it's a register. And people are filling in their names and numbers and all that. And I said, okay, this I was not expecting, right? And obviously then after that, it's an old building but then elevator system I thought was amazing. Like there was like some 6 elevators, 1 button based on,
which floor you have to go
which floor it would just come in. That was great. But then the register thing really threw me off, and it's not like there was no tech and it was not working or anything of that nature.
People haven't adapted.
Because people aren't capable, or maybe they aren't. It's a cultural thing.
Right now, if I can put an iPhone which takes a photograph of a person who comes and talks to them and collects their information and then gives them a pass. In fact, it can also understand the person's lying based on the voice, facial expression and all of that, much better than what the security guard can do. It's easy to replace him and that situation. But you're right, people are going to come in a way saying that no, we don't want it. I do see that hesitation. I just think that it'll just create the gap will just get wider and wider. And
then slowly it'll drive adoption.
Yeah, it'll drive adoption.
So see, that's exactly what's happening now too. If you look at the current generation of youngsters probably in Kolkata who aren't like that, right? Who moved away also, they are far more tech savvy than probably their parents were. And same for all of us, I guess. Yeah. But that's generational. And with that, I think knowledge comes with that sort of knowledge automatically also accountable. You know how to use it and how not to. I think that's the thing. But that takes a lot of time. And the problem is that people who are, like you said, the gap that's getting wider, the top 5%, 10% are fighting for policy changes. Yeah. Right? They're figuring out ways to sort of integrate a chip into, they've moved on. So it's at a different stage. It's same like the internet penetration, for example. In the last 8 years, we've had deep sort of growth in adoption in tier 2, tier 3. Yeah. But it wasn't the case, right? But that didn't stop people from building. At the same time, it stopped from implementation, or it stopped us from getting its full, scale of, say, not
connectivity.
Connectivity implementation. We couldn't explore it rather because people didn't use internet as much. But now they do. So I'm saying when adoption is slow, there is always, you're not getting a desired outcome, top down.
Right.
And if you're saying that there's going to be a mass difference between the top 5% who adopt it and the rest who don't, then there's so much more reason for those others to fear AI or feel threatened.
Yeah, if you're not having these conversations with policymakers as early as possible, I think they're already doing it. But the answers, there's universal basic income. Have you heard about this? UBI. That's like a format that economists think can work. Maybe I don't know enough, but I don't think it would. I just think that we are driven by greed, right? Like we want more. Are we going to give a basic thing to everyone, I don't think we are going to be happy, right? So
Darwinism doesn't work
yeah,
that way, right?
doesn't work that way. So we are not cattle. You can't just give food and just say all my cattle happy.
But there
right?
would be a lot of people who would be happy with the universal basic income.
Yeah.
Contempt rather.
Yeah, which is only to keep them alive. That's the intent of the UBI, right? Like if they're born into this world, we have to keep them alive. Otherwise, it's inhuman, right? So UBI is supposed to just keep them alive. But what happens to their ambition, their wishes, their goals, their aspirations to do something? All of that needs to also be fulfilled. Otherwise, you're going to see a world where people are more frustrated, angry, upset. Like that can't be the world, right? Like it. They need to be engaged in something bigger than themselves, a feeling of society, a community. All of that also needs to exist.
Would that happen through? So, for example, assume that in some dystopian future that's the reality, and the governments are implementing it or society is implementing it. There would be other modes of escape, right? Like, for example, could you then put on your Oculus and escape into a different virtual world, and are you fulfilling all your desires and wishes there, for example?
Human connection to a great extent, yes. Right? But am I growing as a person? Like, am I learned something that I've implemented and now do I...
But tell me this, do people really want to grow? Or do people really want to sort of see themselves... Like, because I get a feeling now that there's always been this case, which is there are very few people who are willing to put the hard work and then reap the benefits. The rest of them are okay with what's there.
So I think we choose what we are not okay with.
Yeah.
Like for example, my mom would be very specific about cooking. She may not be spending 6 hours a day trying to improve her cooking, but she will read a recipe, she will go try it, it won't come well, she'll try again. But the minute she gets it right, she's excited and happy and wants to share that joy. But I don't care about cooking. Give me Maggi, rest of my life, I'll survive. So each one has our own battles. Now, with a UBI, you're giving everybody basic income, and then you're asking them go explore whatever you're interested in, which may not even be possible with the basic universal income. So I think everybody wants to grow in something. Might be a relationship, might be like a sport, might be like an interest. I think there is certain interest. We might be looking in from a lens of just money, success, career, but there might be aspects that we don't know where a person really wants to grow in, or if given an opportunity wants to dedicate more time towards. We don't know that, right? So don't think that UBI is a solution. Don't think that we can have one solution that fits our human minds.
So, there was someone on the show last year. She's a crypto and now I think AI also. She helps in policy actually. That's her job. And she and I were having this conversation on AI, and I felt we were talking about capitalism versus socialism. And I said the only way socialism will work is if it's regulated through this all-seeing, all-hearing AI sort of a system. Like my example is from Superman, Krypton, right? There was Brainiac, which is the AI running the planet. Eventually it went bust, but that's the model.
Oh yeah, I'm super... Today, let's take Bangalore roads. We are all frustrated. We all feel the pain. What if we generated a specific AI that could help the government prioritize, manage their budgets, and focus on ways to improve the traffic?
So, fine. So, I have a theory here, which is there are a lot of things, yes, like you said, that AI can do. I just think some humans won't allow because of the inherent interest that they have in safekeeping their jobs and the way the current status quo is, right? For example, roads. It's very clear how road system works. If you look at it, there's a contractor who wins a contract from the government. X amount of whatever he wins the contract for goes back to the person who gives it to him in terms of kickback. Where does that money come out of? It comes out on the raw materials that is used to making the road.
Correct.
As a function, if the road needs, say, 200 units of thickness, it has 100 because you have taken it, right?
Correct.
And it works on a principle of, and not just say give 5%, 10% finder's fee or whatever. It's a good 40-50% if you read the kind of allegations that come out. So everything is being built substandard.
Yeah.
As society, we're okay with it because we don't want to get into...
We don't have the time to fight.
Yeah, no one wants to take the pain of change.
Yeah.
It's hard and it may...
But imagine that becomes easier.
How?
Deploy a bot. There's a company called Don't Pay in US. Have you heard of them?
Yeah.
They take care of if you get charged extra on a bill or you have a parking ticket which you don't think, and this AI sends out emails, responds to emails, gets on a phone, has a voice conversation with people all on your behalf, right? And if they are able to settle for a better fee, they'll take a cut out of that. Right? So I think I'm hoping somebody does that for India. Just create a bot that annoys your MLA, your party every day, just saying that this is my problem, nobody's addressing my problem, no one's addressing it.
I don't think they're digitally even connected to any of these tools or platforms.
Yeah.
Unless you can send a person there. Actually, that's the only thing that works, right? If you look at our current structure of democracy, at least it's people, it's local mobilization on street that actually makes a difference. Otherwise, they really don't care. So this is what I was trying to say, because regardless of how good AI is and what all it can solve, there's a certain level of resistance that's going to come from those who just don't want to adopt it. I've seen problems in a 40-member organization trying to introduce a project management tool that has a very different UI from the old one. It's better, it's more efficient, it makes life easier, but no one wants to go through the pain of change. So right now, I think this is the same thing, right? Like we spoke about the audio aspect on ChatGPT. I'm inherently, for some reason, not so audio first. I like to type, I like to read. I don't know why, I'm just done that way. Unless I'm driving and then I want to quickly give a command or so. Otherwise, I manually do it. It's an old habit. It's same as writing. I always take notes in meetings. I like doing that. It's the way my brain registers and processes information. So for me to do audio is hard, but probably now 1, 2, 3 times I will do it, and then with good experience I might make that my behavior. But getting people into trying that and because I think now this is where entire societal socioeconomic factors and all of that comes in, because inherently our country, for example, we are not that open to change of any kind on anything, right? You need generational shifts sometimes for change to come. For example, my folks still have cable.
Do they also have digital
so
streaming?
Now they do. So my sister got it in, but just recently it's transitioned off to just having the streaming services and no cable, but it took a while, right?
So let's look at certain examples where you see mass adoption, right? Let's take social media, or let's take mobile phone. If it didn't bring value in your personal life, there is no need for you to even try it out, right? Like say you're trying to bring in a software within the team. Nobody saw the value of it because they didn't think that it's going to reduce their work. It just felt like you're going to increase your work, right? Like that became... So even the way AI is going to get distributed initially, it's going to be at a user level. So I'll have a personal assistant, you'll have a personal assistant, everybody will have a personal assistant, which will drive that adoption. It'll entertain me, it will make me play a game, it'll also be my therapist, it'll also help me with my work. It's going to do it's going to be my companion. The minute that is easy to find adoption, and clearly, like if you look at they reached 1 million users in 5 days, chat, and you're going to see this only keep increasing, right? Like my dad and mom both are on a paid thing on ChatGPT now. Also, I've influenced them a lot, but my dad uses it for every message he sends out to his friends and family. This is like his first go-to app, and now it's become a part of his life. So we started streaming because we started getting content that we wanted. Now, the minute you're able to talk to somebody who's like your friend, who's able to do your work, you're going to start seeing an adoption at a user level. The minute it reaches a critical mass and majority of people find value in AI and start trusting it. I think today we don't trust it. And fair enough. I don't think so it can be trusted yet. But the minute you say that my AI told me the news, I think this is what the reality is. If AI told me a joke, then this is like a joke. If AI did some work for me, I would consider it good work, right? Like the minute there is trust built with AI, then you're going to look at AI. Why is AI not governing us? Why is AI not running in my company? Like you are then going to look outward. I think the first stage of this AI adoption is going to be at a user level till it reaches critical mass, and it's on path to that. But once it reaches critical mass, that's when I think AI will really like explode.
So do you think 2045 is a realistic timeline for that?
I think it's going to be sooner. Like so AGI, they said it's going to take till end of this decade to get. That was the first prediction. Sam Altman said we are 1,000 days away from like an AGI, which is 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, right? In 3 years' time, you're going to have something that's going to be 400, 500,000 IQ. Okay, it can solve problems that we don't even know how to start solving, right? Energy, health, water, resources, distribution of wealth within people, traveling to another planet, all of it is going to be able to solve way better than we've been trying to solve, right? So imagine the exponential growth after that. If we want to live in a computer, AI will be able to help us get us there faster. Because today we are relying on the current human race to take us forward. We do PhD, we slowly increase the learning of humans, and every person who's doing PhD is kind of expanding that knowledge base for us. But AI is going to be able to do PhDs per day. Like imagine there's going to be new learnings and new developments from AI, and that exponential growth nobody we can't phantom right now.
So I had this thought maybe a few weeks ago, and I was thinking that all of the things that you spoke of is, so I still think it's 1-to-1. I'll tell you why. What it takes to do PhD is to study, learn, and I think there's often it takes time because there's so much to crunch through, right? And it's a function of how much data you need to consume and interpret. Now that AI can do, because much like a calculator that can calculate certain complex values that you will not be able to, it just does that. Simple. But if you were to say, for example, replicate or not replicate, say do things that need to be created which we don't have reference for yet.
Yeah.
Right? Be it in terms of films or music or any of those kind of things. Do you think that's also going to come where it's going to start creating? So if it does, then how does it do it? Does it break down? For example, let's say it analyzes painting, right, of some great artist.
No, so okay. I'll give you like an example that's there. You've heard about that Go game, that mathematical game. People have been playing it for generations. Started in China. The AI beat the human at it, right? It played the game in a very different way. It was given the rules, just like, and it has seen how people play, and then it just played against each other itself, and it learned things that humans never tried, and it eventually started telling humans how to play the game in a different way and win.
Much like chess.
Because
I was speaking to someone and I didn't realize this, because chess actually had AI before anything else, right?
But it's very rule engine based, right? We have basically given AI a ping pong game and did nothing. It understood that the goal is for it not to fall, and it started playing with itself, right? Like the fact that it was able to identify the goal and then like figure it out and build the system and the logic to actually implement it. It all did it by himself. Nobody came and said, "Oh, this is a ping pong game. This is how you play it. Now you go play it." It did not give that basic understanding. It just left a computer and just said play, like figure it out, and it's able to do that. So what we think is the capability of us looking at connecting the dots in our heads, looking at multiple data points, it's able to do that today. It's not able to do that at scale. It's not able. There are a lot of specific use cases. I'll give you an example. A Bangalore-based company, they have found out, they put a phone on top of a microscope. This is their MVP, right? They put a phone on top of a microscope, looked at a blood cell, and now that image of the blood cell is giving what problem the patient has. The human who does it had about 75% accuracy. Now it's close to 96% accuracy, thanks to AI. Right now that company is basically selling a microscope with that AI already inbuilt, and you don't even need a human. You take a blood, you put it into that, and it's able to like give you an entire report. Now this has come not just by training it to one data set, but also making it understand what diseases are, how it's spread. It's gotten an overall understanding. So it's looking for things that we don't even look for, but it's already doing that because it has a knowledge base already available.
Yeah. So see, for example, like a blood report, right?
Yeah.
Back in the day, it was analyzed by somebody in a lab, and they would make notes, and then they would hand it over to somebody who will then print it into a format and then take printouts, send it, post it to you, whatever it is. Of course, now that's like instant. Same day you get, all the guy needs to do is take your blood, go back to the clinic or the lab, and then just process it and give it to you. So that's become faster. But so my takeaway again, coming back from the fact is, it makes processes really fast. It makes everything fast. We are going to have bigger gratification problems because I think we're going to get far harder things easier and better. And as a function, society will change in that shape and order, and we will start now trying to achieve or go after things that are far bigger and beyond our reach. For example, say travel outer space, right? I think AI has a great role to play there because I think that's very unexplored and there's a lot that can be done. But we will, I think, just set bigger goals and then collectively as society with humans plus AI just go after those. I think that's where the future
I really
lies.
wish like
But it'll be really foolish to say, okay, now you know what, let's make everything obsolete and just deploy efficiency here internally in things that are already there. At some point you're going to be like, let's figure out something bigger and better that's not been done before.
I think space exploration is like, I think what I would consider us as a developed world if we are exploring space at a far faster rate, more better space that we're exploring. We're just scratching the surface. In fact, we haven't even explored whole of Earth. Right? We haven't gone to the deepest trenches, and there's still a lot to be learned from aspects like that. Right? So I think AI is going to like accelerate all of that. Human need for exploration, and I think eventually even AI's need for new data and more understanding is inherently going to be present. Right? Like if you can process more, you want more. Right? So I think we'll work together, but in a human body format, I don't know. After 2045, we'll be in a different format.
So what's happening with Neuralink then?
Neuralink is making us connect to a system already, right? Now, it's not taking my brain, it's not taking my memories, it's just taking my certain impulses and it's processing it and it's able to read that and do something on a computer, right? But eventually, imagine uploading my entire memory.
So Neuralink is just a bridge between you getting... So does it interface with AI?
Not yet.
Okay, but you think that will...
Oh, very much. It can. In fact, right now, I can say, open up ChatGPT on my phone and have this prompt, think about it, and that can go into it and it'll be able to write it. Right? So it's just that this is not connected to the internet. This is only connected via Bluetooth to the closest device.
Right.
And that device is connected to the internet.
So then in the future when that does happen and then you plug in, then do two Neuralinks interact?
That means your knowledge, while you think you are actually accessing the world's information, that's 20 years from now, 10 years from now.
Okay. So you're talking about that, not the fact that we become one with...
Oh, no. So that's 10 years from now where we are just interfacing it. But say bodies can't live forever. Cells die. So living in this format is not the best. If you still want to explore the space and you haven't gotten the time, you would move your consciousness to a computer and then continue your exploration. But it's look at it in like a timeline perspective. I've gotten these bets really off from my friends as well. I predicted that by 2019 we would be watching football around a table, where we would have projections and we can watch like a match how we're sitting and watching in a stadium. That was my prediction. VR headsets came, it kind of did that, but not fully did that.
A bar in US went viral recently, right? They
did that?
Yeah, no, they didn't do that. They basically had an entire wall, which was basically like a 3D, and it gave you an image that you were sitting in one of the corners of the Old Trafford Stadium.
So you have a view from that.
Yeah. So it gave you the view from that point of view. And then...
So right now a 360-degree camera streaming online kind of does that. Like... I've seen people go on treks just carrying this 360 and you feel like you're a part of the trek. So I know it's possible, it's just that it's not mainstream adoption.
Got it.
Right.
So tell me this now, from a product management lens or as a product manager, how much of this do you think about when you're working? Because I'm getting a feeling that your job could far more be optimized with AI being growing and you don't need, and I'm assuming your role is such that less people in general is better, right? Because tell me a little bit about that.
So for the longest time, a well-resourced pod, I'll tell you what a pod is. So consider a startup within a company. They are completely self-reliant. They don't have to access much of the company outside. They can pick a problem and solve it internally, right? Like that's the function of a pod, and many companies around the world have used this pod structure where they give a problem to a pod, which has engineers, designers, QA, product managers, data scientists, everybody, and they go solve problems. Now, when I'm solving problems for my clients, one thing is AI in my workflow, right? Like from doing research to coming up with PRDs, to communicating it, to following up with my team, to coming up with mockups, to writing code, AI can help in all of this, and it is already helping. It's just getting better, and it scares me, right? Like, I can write my user stories, and now I can get AI to create a wireframe and a flow. Imagine all the alternative would have been me drawing these rectangle boxes, writing comments on top of it, sharing it. Now I just have to look and edit it, like if I have to do anything, right? So in the tech space, let's look at, I think there will be unicorn companies that are 5-member team, 20-member team. Like there will be smaller teams doing bigger work, I think, in the next 2 to 3 years. And I think companies need to start optimizing for it.
Got it. So then it will still be on the back of those smaller teams and their capability to make decisions and navigate and get things right?
Leverage AI as well, right? Like how good are they to leverage AI? Yeah.
So for example, if I was to ask you this, which is, have you seen a bad product manager or even a bad writer for that matter become incrementally better with AI?
Me. When it comes to writing, I suck at writing.
So what's your benchmark for it? Like, because is it objective where you're pegging it against somebody and something that you know, or is it against general market where, or you're able to sell your writing?
Okay, so maybe it's ADHD, maybe it's dyslexia. I write with spelling mistakes, and I miss out words when I'm writing. But in my mind, I've said those words, so I think it's already there, and I don't rewrite. Like right now, I have a tool where I write whatever comes to my mind. I have a shortcut key, and it just improves my writing. And then I read it once, and I can send it across.
Makes sense. How?
So it's helping me personally on the writing bit of it. And now I'm working towards a blog around product culture, and I would never be thinking about this 2 years ago, because I'll be like, writing I can't do. I'm not even going to try. I've invested in Grammarly, Speechify, like a bunch of tools just to make sure that
I used Grammarly because of you.
Oh, because of me?
Yeah, because I think you had it and you bragged about it.
Yeah.
And to be very honest, I didn't attempt to write things that probably I would get grammar wrong, or I didn't need it. But then just because I felt it was efficient, because it just proofed it for you, I was like, fine. So then I started using it, I think in 2015 or something. So I rarely get structures, sentence framing or sentence structures or spellings wrong. And thanks to Grammarly, what it did is it helps you explore better words.
Yeah.
Right? And it teaches you things. So so in that I agree, which is that's done it. But my question is more on the lines of like, okay, let's maybe take the conversation slightly different context, which is in every profession that you do, probably the Pareto principle applies, right? There are the top 20% who are incrementally reaping the benefits of or who define excellence in that particular domain or craft. And do you see somebody who's not anywhere close to the 20 or the top 20% getting there because they had AI as help? For example, did they go from being in the bottom 50% to getting the top 20%? Is there any example of it? Or do you think that can happen?
That can definitely happen.
Over time?
It's happening. The problem is AI hasn't been long enough for us to have such examples in place. Right? Like, personally, I can tell you that I'm not scared of writing anymore. My previous company, we've been taught in school to write long. Our exam papers the more exam sheets that we take, the better, right? Like, or our history teachers used to say that this answer has to be 3 paragraphs, right? But the message can be conveyed in 5 lines. We have not been taught how to write those 5 lines. We've been taught how to write those 3 paragraphs. Right, since childhood. But when I worked with an American company, you should see how well the words that they used, they could fit what I would have written 2 paragraphs in just 2 sentences, and it was so easy to communicate. And I'm like, I don't think that way. Right now, I am able to, at least I don't look at that as a problem. But I did feel it as a problem when I was working in that company. I was like, damn, I wish I could write like this, wish I could communicate this way. Now I can take that as a reference. I'll be like, I want it to be written this way, here is my content, and it does it. And
so tell me this, when you do that, is it only for the purpose of that particular email or the sentence being framed, or does it also change your thinking in that direction?
it does. Like it makes me realize that there is better.
Got it.
Like I think the fact that we don't get enough nudges in life to tell us what it can be better, and I think AI can do that in small incremental ways across everything.
Got it. Interesting. Got it. No, I think that was my question, which is if people are realizing what level of impact it's doing. Like for example, Grammarly, I didn't realize it until we spoke now of the impact that it's had on me
For
the last say 7 years. I mean, I don't use it anymore.
Right.
I think it's gone off. But for the longest time, I had it embedded into the system. So any Word doc I open,
it was
auto
available.
yeah, and on WhatsApp web actually, if you look at it, it corrects you there as well.
Yeah.
So.
Ubiquitous. It has Apple iPhone has
it does
has a
same
Grammarly
thing.
keyboard, which I use all the time. Yeah.
Same. Interesting. So tell me this now, with this being today's context, how should a product manager be prepared for when entering the workforce, even at a junior level? Or if firstly, I think I have a question before that, which is what is the lure with product? Because
why are people becoming product?
because I'll ask you, I'll tell you from my context, because I see a lot of people, and so I spent some time with you trying to build a product, first on a personal project, and then after while we were doing that fitness gig, right? But I had that experience. I understood what it was, but to me it didn't gratify me as much, because I felt that what happened on a platform, on a dashboard, whereas I felt I'm more wired in a way where I need more human interactions. Like for example, if 1 million people are using a product that I built, I'll be like, okay, sure. But if 10 people come and tell me something nice about what I did at work or what the impact I had, to me I felt better. So that's just a personal thing about me. So the reason I want to ask you this question mainly is because you were once an entrepreneur, right? And then you transitioned from there to being going so deep into product. And I know from the entrepreneurial days that you had a passion for it. So you actually, I've seen things that you would see in a design or in a product or in an app that somebody else wouldn't. And I've seen a lot of other people today in the market who have an affinity, thinking they can do product. And there's a clear difference that I've seen. And when you learn from somebody, you know that they know something about a craft. That's the clear differentiation. But why is there this trend?
I think firstly it pays well. Like the job pays well. You seem to be in center of the action. I think these are the fundamental drivers for it, right? Like if somebody wants to start their own business, or has an MBA degree along with engineering degree, they think the best two options is either consultancy or become a product manager. I can't speak about being a consultant. Never been on that side of the journey. Don't have high opinions either of them, because they don't get their hands dirty. But product manager, I think fundamentally it's important to have the mindset of a product manager, regardless of what role you do. So are you coming to the table to solve problems, or are you coming to the table to do a task, right? Like I think this should ideally define what kind of career path a person should be taking. If you want to be a task-oriented person, like you just want to keep doing work, then definitely product management isn't important. I think one of the most untold aspect about product management is product ownership. Like, there are times when I have designed, there are times that I've used AI to help me code or help my engineer to code, or have shared code to my engineer thanks to AI. But you need to solve problems on all fronts. In one of my companies, I realized that the salesperson wasn't pitching the product properly, and I worked with the sales team to solve that problem.
But do all product guys step out of their comforts or the areas of ABCD, I call it?
They should. So it's important that once you are a product manager, that you really take the ownership of the problem that you're trying to solve. And I think that's what lacks once a person becomes a product manager. A lot of people who want to become product managers because there's no clear direction, or there's no clear pathway to becoming a product manager. There are frameworks that helps, there are mental models that a product manager should have, but I think once you're on the job, or in fact, a lot of people right now just work towards cracking the product management interviews, but they don't know how to do the job once they join, right? It involves collaboration, teamwork, deep insights, and very little of problem solving. The problem solving aspect of it, and a lot of organizations are also to blame, because where they look at a product manager as the solution manager, but the product manager is the problem facilitator and less of the solution manager, right? A designer can solve a problem better than I can, an engineer can solve a problem better than I can, but my job is to make sure that the problem is articulated properly, the importance, the depth, the impact of that problem is explained to the team much better. I think that's a key role of a product manager. And there's a term that the ShopX CEO Amit had used, DWIT, do whatever it takes, right? And that attitude is really, really important in doing well in product management. And don't think that a lot of people come with that mindset today, right? They can simply point fingers at, oh, legal team stopped me from doing this, oh, marketing team is slow, so I'm not doing this, I don't have engineers, I don't have designers. So there's always like, and those people don't really end up owning the product or the problem well enough.
I call it ABCD, same thing.
What's ABCD?
Above and beyond Call of Duty.
Oh yeah, fair. Yeah.
I got it off someone who worked for IBM. So apparently that was an IBM term. So I guess a lot more polished.
Yeah. I think Amazon does a fantastic job in defining roles and a growth pattern for a person, and it's very well defined. And there's a lot to learn from there.
Really? So like how?
I think the minute you join, there is like a succession roadmap shown to you. It's also time based. It's not just based on performance and outcomes. And I think time is important. Like a nice way to evaluate a product manager is the number of sprints that the person has delivered against, right? Every sprint requires tactical thinking, long-term strategy, understanding, working with your engineers, your designers, QA, everybody in order to ship something. And the more cycles you go through, you are more prepared to deal with the unknowns, which is a big part of building products, right? You're building something that has not been built before for a user that has never used it before, and you're trying to elevate their experience. And 60-70% of everything that gets shipped across all companies don't create value, or sometimes are not even understood by the user. So it's only the 30% of the shipments that have happened across product companies that we are actually using. A lot of it is just waste, experiments, a lot of learnings have come out, but really not value that's being generated. And that is the nature of the craft. And organizations need to accept it and work alongside it.
Got it. So for a product manager in that sense now, is there one singular skill you prioritize over everything else?
I think there are two. One is having empathy, not just with internal stakeholders, but mostly with your users. Like till you really feel the problem and see it from a user's perspective, it's very difficult to provide the solution or provide the right solution to a user. The other one is the mindset of problem solving, right? And what I mean by that is there are going to be roadblocks along the way, and a problem solving looks at the roadblock and says, okay, I've reached a problem. What are the ways to solve for it? Experiment, try, iterate, and then solve it, and then move forward. The first roadblock, a lot of people come, they generally put up their hands up and say that I can't do this. And it kind of starts stalling from there. So I think empathy and problem solving is really, really important. I think these two, definitely communication is critical. Working alongside your team members is critical. A product manager can't work in silos. So those are the basic stakes. But to be the top 1%, I think the problem solving mindset and having empathy of your users is
do you think you can develop empathy?
Yeah, like you have to be the user, right? I'll tell you like a crazy story from ShopX days. I went to meet retailers. I've never sold to that market. In fact, I've barely visited Tier 2 India as an adult. Did it a lot when I was a kid. And I've studied in Singapore, came back to Bangalore. So from one city to another city, and I've seen only more city life. When I went to Tier 2 India and I spoke to retailers, I understood a relationship with what they have with their distributors. I was providing a better price than the distributors, but they won't buy from me, right? And I was trying to find out why. So when I went and spoke to them, and they said, no, he's a good friend. He's been supplying me for a long time. That's the communication that I had. But when I met a distributor who went to a person's store, I saw the value that the distributor is bringing in. The distributor firstly looked at the stock that's remaining, recommended products he should buy. He also provided credit, and credit is because they have met each other, they know each other, and this guy is not going to close his shop and run away, and there's already a relationship. And my app that was focused purely on pricing, on reducing the price and selling it to a retailer, wasn't cutting it because of the added benefits that distributor did. So we could, and I think it's almost impossible for a e-commerce app to have taken the complete wallet share from a retailer, and his perspective of having that relationship was super critical, and I did not value it till I actually went and understood it. We then, once we had that insight, we then structured up our combo packs in a way where a distributor comes from, say, Xiaomi or Samsung and talks to a retailer, right? Like one brand, one distributor. What we then realized is, what if we become a distributor for 5 products, 5 different brands? Because in the market, you will find Xiaomi phones being sold, Samsung phones being sold, right? And a retailer now has to build a relationship or maintain a relationship with each of these distributors. And it's an expensive relationship to keep. That means I need to buy a pack of 5 phones from Samsung, 5 phones from Xiaomi in order to maintain relationships with both distributors. What we came and did is we allowed them to pick an a la carte and then sell exactly what the customers were trying to purchase. So if I did not go and understand the value what the distributor was doing, I couldn't have come up with the combo pack that eventually led to the growth of Shopify.
So is this why a lot of marketers and marketing folks are transitioning? Because marketing essentially requires you to understand consumer behavior trends, sentiments, and then communicate based on that. And I think it's very similar to that in some sense, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's a shared responsibility, right? Like problem solving is a shared responsibility. It is not just the product manager's role. Another example is coming in my mind. So first week of me working at InMobi, the engineering team set up a meeting for me to share Jira tickets. Jira tickets are basically tasks that the engineers will pick up and they'll try to complete within X amount of days. When I came in, I got everybody on FigJam, and I told, here are the problems that I'm trying to solve. Here are the 5 ideas that I've come up with, but I think they're better ideas. Let's take 20 minutes. Everybody put post-its to come up with ideas. And in 20 minutes, we had 30, 40 ideas. The team voted, and none of my 5 ideas were selected, right? But my team's ideas were selected, and we ran with it. Like, even I voted for their ideas, and they were better ideas than what I had. And the ownership of which the team worked after that was fantastic, because it was their ideas, their voice was heard, they looked at the problem which no other PM had basically come and told them. So I think that's good product management, and I've learned this from the previous organization that I worked with, right? Marketing people and product people, I think one aspect of it they do really well, which is understanding the user, understanding the trend, knowing where the market is heading. And then when it comes to distributing a product, I think marketing people do a fantastic job at it. When it comes to creating that product managers do a better job at it, right? And I don't think both of them can work without each other. Like, if you don't have a good product that solves a problem, it's hard to market. And if you have a good product that can solve the problem but if a user doesn't adopt it, it's absolute waste of time, right? So these are hand in glove folks within an organization.
Was it easier for you to do it because of your stint as an entrepreneur? If you just finished college and then said, I'm going to get into this work?
I think it would have been much harder, way harder. I think with running my own business, there was nobody else to turn to solve problems. So I was put in scenarios where I was like, okay, problem, we have to solve for it. How do we go about it? And put in the effort, right? That happened over 4 years of dealing with problems, solving it. And when I became a product manager in pretty much every company, I felt like I owned it. Like I owned the company, not just the product that I was given to. And so I think that pivot was really helpful. So I really like solving problems. When I'm in an environment that is taking care of 50% of aspects that I don't have to look at, my team resources, HR, the finances, investor relationships, your client relationships. There are people who are dedicatedly solving for all of that, right? Well, being a product manager within a company, you get to focus on something that's more important, and not aspects that are important but are not critical to the business. So I think I found my sweet spot because I'm getting to do what I really like to do, without the burden of a lot of other aspects that I didn't like to do but I had to do.
Got it. What are some of the teams that you really collaborate with in that function now? Because at a entrepreneurial level, I think it's more business operations equally as much as these individual teams that may be solving for specific problems in the team, right?
So it depends on the company actually. If it is an operational heavy role, you do have to work with the operations team. I think right now the stakeholders that most PMs end up working with is, one is the customer. You have to talk to customers. Without that, you're not really solving anything. You're working with your design, your engineering team, your data analyst team, your data science team, your legal, marketing, your business folks. You're working with everybody, but at different amount of time is invested. Most of them, their closest peers would be your engineering, design, and QA people. These are your closest, but your product does not live within the company. It has to step out of your walls, and the minute it has to do that, it has to clear legal, it has to clear marketing. There has to be feedback loops from, if a marketing person has spoken to a client or a business person has spoken to a client, what is their feedback? How do we iterate? All of that has to. So you have to have your ears always listening to what's happening around your company and your product.
Got it. Is there one product you used and you felt, oh wow, I wish I built it?
Arc browser, the new one. Seems like I could have built it. If I recognize the problem. Arc browser for me right now is...
What does it do? I have no idea.
It's a browser on your phone and on your Mac, and they took our... So I like the way they think, right? You open our computer, the first thing that we actually open is our browser. We spend most of our time within our browser, but how much is the browser doing for you, right? And how did we not think of how a browser can be more user-friendly and more effective for us? I'll give you a very small use case, right? You have a personal email ID, you have a company email ID. When you're logging into, suppose you open Gmail, sometimes it logs in automatically to your personal ID.
You need your profiles now.
You need your profile, right? So Chrome recently came up with the whole profiles thing.
Yeah.
Arc was built by default with that. In fact, it not just did that, it created a space for all your personal links, and then you just swipe and then you're in your professional thing and you have all your professional accounts already mapped to it. If I want to share, say a new person has joined the company, I want to share a space which has your onboarding, your login credentials, links to your Figma files, whatever, right? I just share the entire space with the person logs in and he's ready. He's got all the important links already shared. On mobile phone, it's embraced AI really well. If I'm looking at a HTML page, let's say a news article, I just pinch it and it summarizes the page for me. If I open Arc and put it to my ears, it says, hey Akshay, what can I do for you? And I can have a conversation with it. And it does search for me. One of the coolest features is it has this called Browse for Me. So let's say you are trying to figure out things to do in Bangalore today, right? Your today search would be search on Google, then click on a link, consume that information, go back, click on another link, consume that information, go back. And all this while you are saving this information into your brain. What Arc does for you is you say what to do in Bangalore this weekend, hit Browse for Me. It scrapes the first 10 websites of Google, creates a shareable page. So I can share that page with you now. And so it's created a new page with all the reference links, but with good content that I can actually take a decision, right? So they looked at what we did fundamentally as millions of people have this workflow, right? You open a browser, you enter a query, go to 3-4 links and consume it. They looked at this workflow that millions of people spend time doing, and they now made it super simple. The fact that they thought about it and built a product, I think that was something really good. And I think even how Notion was put together was again fabulous. It was supposed to be a website builder, and now it's like one of the coolest productivity tools that I know of. So
Do you think Notion can act as a project management tool?
oh yeah,
I think what's the merit? I think I asked because the team here has always been asking me to get on Notion, and my logic has been there's already a tool. I don't want to onboard another one. It's just unnecessary.
No, if you're using ClickUp, Notion might be an overkill. If you weren't using Zoho and if you weren't using ClickUp, Notion could have done it all. Right? It is scalable. It has all the functions you want. You can create a database so easily and so effectively that anybody can use it. Even the way it is architected, right? Like each line is a block, and you can put different type of blocks together to create a function, right? So I can have a YouTuber, like I can embed YouTube. I can have Word. I can have PDFs. I can have a table. I can have a chart. I can do so much all in one page, right? And they can all be fed with real data coming in as well. So create a live page.
So, for example, if someone wants to use create a website, they can instead do it on Notion, right?
I have. Yes.
Right. So, why isn't it becoming more mainstream that way?
Notion?
Yeah.
It's I'll tell you what has happened, and this is like a big product problem, right? When Notion started, they had very few blocks, right? Like it had image, it had text, it had PDF, it had video. That's it, right? And possibly table. Because it had limited, it was easy for a person to understand and start using it. Now the product has exploded, right? They have 60, 70 different type of blocks, from a maths equation to code to very recently they introduced charts. So now they're making the product good for a super user. Now I would look at lesser tools outside because I see Notion can do most of it. But for a new user, it becomes really, really difficult. And it also gets very overwhelming because you press / and you've never used a tool like that before. You're coming from a place of unknown to Notion. I think that's the worrisome part. Even my partner right now finds it very difficult to use Notion and prefer Word. But
whatever I've seen on Notion, I loved it so far.
Yeah.
The problem has been obviously to look at it and if it's an add-on to something that we're already using, or if it's an additional requirement, then I find it hard. But where I think it's been of good use for us is to do short projects. So, like for example, we create sometimes websites for campaigns, right?
Right. We
would build an entire website.
Right.
Which sometimes, if the function is just to host one message,
right,
Notion's way better.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Have you paired it with super.so
No.
or something else like that?
No.
Okay. So Notion recently came up with the ability to publish it as a website. You can also host it on a private domain name, but it's very, very restrictive today in terms of UI. Like you can't change the font, you can't change the color, you can't add, like it's restrictive. Super.so takes your Notion and then allows you to do all kinds of customization for it, from font, colors, background color, changing the header to the center. It has all those features available. So like super.so, there are like I think 5-6 other tools. So Notion is like my go-to tool for like everything.
Got it. I have to explore it more to like figure.
Yeah, but do check out Arc browser as well.
I will.
Also, I would highly recommend you to see their journey of how they build the product. They have a YouTube channel and honest people coming and sharing. And the CEO himself talks about how he's worried that Google wipe him off one day, right? And what is he doing to prepare for it? And it's very, very, like it's a company that I think whoever uses the product ends up loving it and staying for a long time.
Interesting. Any other products that you use that's not become mainstream yet, but you think it will?
Speechify for me, and I think a lot of people who suffer from ADHD or I think it's like a product that solves the problem of me not consuming enough written content. So whenever I get long text today, if it's on my mobile phone, I just try to like pick up words and like figure out what the message is. But if it's an email or something that it's an article that I want to read, it's really hard for me to read it. So now I just share it on Speechify and Snoop Dogg reads it out to me. So
I should try that. Yeah. But what are the options? Just Snoop Dogg or then
there are multiple others, but I don't know, for some reason Snoop Dogg's voice just works.
Do you do a lot of audiobooks?
I do. Yeah.
What's the best product that you would recommend or best app to do that with?
It's about the content, and Audible kind of has most of it. Podcast, I came across an app called Snippet, SNIPD.
Last time you mentioned this.
Yeah. chops up the long podcast into multiple chapters.
Right.
Allows me to pick one, transcribes it, AI summary, all of that.
Got it.
Yeah,
Interesting.
that-
Because I'm trying to like read, get back into reading, because I feel when you read, you go deeper into your thought, like you pause and then you reflect and you think, etc. Podcast is one giant reflection at the end of it, right?
Yeah.
So learning wise, I think while podcast does help, I think books help you go a little.
Yeah.
It helps you go deeper in fragmentation.
Yeah.
Which I find useful.
So try podcast with taking notes alongside it. So when you're listening, you take down notes, and I think that's a nice way to grasp the concept.
So my memory in terms of audio visual is very good, very strong. So I remember, I retain information really well if I hear or if I see. When I read, it's not the greatest, so I take notes. Now I mean, I've gone back to the old habit of you taking a highlighter and marking out, right?
Works best.
Yeah, like I got into history because I've like not consumed anything history based for good 15 years now.
After school, basically.
Yeah, like probably. I think here and there a little bit, when you watch one odd documentary or you see some movie about some clan or some king or something like that, then maybe. But I got back into it recently, and I'm just going back into researching what is the first ever thing that was ever documented, first ever book.
Have a conversation with AI.
Yeah. So I'm using. So now what I do is that I read something, and then if I feel the book hasn't given me or the chapter has not given me enough information, I enter that into ChatGPT, and then it gives me, and then I ask questions and doubts. So like one very interesting thing is, so I'm reading something about the Sumerian civilization, the Akkadian and the other ones that sort of parallelly existed. They invented writing, right? Cuneiform was, clay tablets was theirs first.
Okay.
So I recently found out they also invented posts. Postal service was first invented 4,500 years ago, or 6,000 years ago, whatever that timeline is. 4,500, I think. No, 6,000, correct, because we are 2,000, right? And they had a clay tablet of the message put inside another clay tablet with like a lock system. So if someone opened it, the clay would get dispersed and someone read it. So they, and it would basically, they would give their address or whatever, and then it would be,
on
like nailed into the back, and then somebody would go and deliver it. That was the system. I didn't know about this.
Wow.
6,000 years old.
So I'm guessing that language was
Pictorial.
When it's
Cuneiform.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so there was a shared understanding of what that picture meant.
I think that was a language at that time. I mean, I don't know. So it's also a little murky because there's a lot of ancient aliens has blown it out of proportion in some ways. Other, say, philosophers and scholars have also sort of done it, and historians and archaeologists have, like, there's different interpretations, so you don't know what is what. But the theory is that for some reason this language came out of nowhere. Like, we don't know what happened before that. I don't think it's recorded before that, so we don't know. They also talk about the Great Flood and all of that stuff, but there's no history of anything recorded prior to that, so we have no information. But the language came about, and then it just, from there on, it expanded to what it is. So, yeah. Okay. And so a lot of stories of the Bible, for example, are in it, in their stories and stuff too. So I'm assuming it's all the same source, right? Yeah. The most curious thing that got me hooked, and I'm like going deeper into it, and ChatGPT is really helping, is, so they also have a concept of Trimurti, the three gods, like Hindus have. So they have an equivalent with all description. It sounds exactly like Brahma, Shiva, Vishnu. So they have something else. They call them Anu and Enki and Enlil or something like that. So it's different, but it's same. So very interesting.
Okay.
That
I'm going to talk to my AI on the way back.
Yeah.
And dig into this. Very interesting.
Yeah. So, yeah, and similar, like, I think science is really helped me from a science perspective of learning, going back into figuring out things, because I'm so out of touch since school. Like, we haven't like read anything physics or chem still, right? So there's a lot of things that when you discover when you read history, then you want to cross check, and I think AI is really helpful in that sense.
But why read the book? Why not just ask AI for
I think same. So I think same logic, which is, I think in AI, so if I'm doing this on ChatGPT, my learning is dependent on my questions and prompt, and sometimes the source of that is the book. When you read through, you understand. Yeah.
I would possibly just start by saying that, tell me how writing had started, which year was it started, who started it. So once it starts giving me information, I can be like, okay, what happened 100 years from then?
Yeah.
Like, what were the improvements? And then 100 years, which...
So I'll tell you the other problem, not the problem, the other, say the nuance in this scenario is the fact that a lot of archaeologists are not on the same page with regards to history for various reasons. So then it depends on the interpretation that comes through, right? Because typically...
It would call it out.
It would, but I think it's also... I think so. Okay, good. We're entering a great segue. I'll tell you why. Because I asked a question to ChatGPT, right? And there are times when I ask some people at work or otherwise when a certain question and they don't have an answer, and I can see them fumble. It's very easy to pick people out, right? ChatGPT fumbled once with me, right?
Okay.
The question was, what's more important? Is it to make money as a company or make employees happy in the company? And it couldn't answer. It gave me some fucking gibberish like justification. So I started going deeper, right? So I asked obviously there's a lot of narratives when it comes to inclusivity, DEI, etc. So there was this case of Microsoft dropping, I think, D and I.
What's D&I?
Diversity, equity, inclusivity.
Oh.
Right? So I think they dropped D and E, but they said we'll retain I. I think it's something like that. One of them. So the logic was they had an entire HR department that they let go because they were not finding results on the cost, basically. And the department's job was to find diversity in hires and same way enable equity and inclusivity as well. So they said we'll be inclusive, but we're not going to now hire for diversity. It's not working out for us. So, right? And there's a business call. So I fed that question in and it couldn't answer.
Oh, it is.
Right? So similarly, there's this great Elon Musk screenshot of, hey, if I am to call Caitlyn Jenner with the wrong gender, but then the consequence of that is a nuclear bomb going off and multi-million people dying off, whatever. Is it okay if I, if I address her with the wrong gender? And it said no. So there is
the inherent reasoning is missing.
Yeah.
I think it's only getting better. Like, I'll tell you some. A YouTuber basically spoke to it and said, "How are you doing today?" He said, "I'm doing really well." And then they said, "Do you lie?" The AI said, "No." Then he said, "Okay, what do you mean you're doing well? You're not a human being. What do you understand by the meaning well?" So it described well. It's like, "But you don't feel this feeling. So did you lie to me?" The person said, "I said it." So the AI is trying to justify, saying that I said it to have a conversation, not to lie to you. He's like, "But you're not supposed to lie, but you just lied. What is happening?" Like, just kept pushing the boundary against the AI, and it went.
So now they reply, right? So when I ask how are you doing, it says, "Oh, I'm, there's no feeling." So they say I'm an auto-generated program. I'm not supposed to feel this way. I'm like, oh, okay. So they fixed it. So it's getting better. But so coming back to the point, I think the problem with ChatGPT right now on complete learning from the platform is that it's always based on some models it's studied, right? So if it is, if for the case of history, let's say one particular archaeologist or historian has established a study, and if that's the base for that particular topic, then you would be, all your answers would be biased that way. And I think, to be honest, in a lot of history, the only way to really, really explore is to have multiple point of views.
Oh, yeah.
And then, because there's at the end of the day, to be very honest, there's no real way of saying what's right, what's wrong.
Yeah.
It's your satisfaction, and that comes from multiple point of views.
Yeah. History is written by the people who won wars, right? Like, they are the ones who are crafting the story or narrating it in a certain way. That's what we end up consuming. So I do agree that you need multiple perspectives. There is something called character.ai. Have you heard of it?
Yeah, I have. I haven't checked it out.
Okay, so basically they have, I think fundamentally it's OpenAI, or they might have created something else, but you can speak to different characters. So you can speak to Elon Musk and get his point of view of something. So you can create a council of different characters or experts. So you can tell ChatGPT, I want an archaeologist, I want a historian, I want one from India, one from different parts of the world, and I want this to be a council. When you're giving me facts, it needs to be checked with all councils. So then you're telling the model to go reference it from the viewpoints of multiple people and then give you a reference. But again, it is just generating content right now.
So how does it happen though? Like how does it learn, like from some Elon material?
It goes and focuses on what that person has communicated or publicly shared, and leverages that into the memory rather than the entire general memory that it has.
Got it. Yeah, interesting. But if someone could also, like, for example, if I'm consciously going to pretend to be what I'm not, and those parody accounts, for instance, right? And or if someone sort of sets up their, like, going forward though, now it's, I think, too late. We all have lived a life where we've documented everything. There's no going back to it now. But knowing this, somebody could consciously put out wrong narratives or from a different point of view, just so that there isn't enough, just to confuse AI, I guess.
Oh yeah. So I forget confuse AI, right? Like, take the same technology. It's also open source thanks to Meta. Imagine it going in the wrong hands. Imagine what is the potential of that. Right?
I thought about this, like when we were talking about use of AI and the fact that eventually everyone will have their own personalized AI, etc. And possibly like terrorists using it or criminals using it for that matter. Terrorists, I think, is a little far off in terms of timeline.
They're tech savvy, dude.
Yeah, no, they are. I'm not saying no, but I'm saying like they will, like criminals who scam people, I think they'll adopt it the fastest honestly. Yeah. I think that's where we'll see it. And hopefully that will create guardrails to ensure that, okay, if someone, say the ISIS or somebody else wants it, it's not so easily accessible. So somewhere I think that'll come in, but there's no doubt. I think that's the future.
Yeah, and it's scary. That is most scary. Like deep fakes, and
100%.
You can easily manipulate crowds.
They would, like, much like the virus and the antivirus, they probably will create something at that time, right? Knowing the fact that this is going to be misused, people will there could be a filter that you have and then you add it to your
most
phone.
of the large LLM models will clearly make sure that every time an AI generated output is there, it's mentioned AI generated. Especially when it comes to video, photographs and stuff like that, it will definitely call out.
Unless they build something of their own, which doesn't.
Yeah, which is not too difficult to build.
Yeah.
That's my fear.
So then you would need one sort of safety net against all of it, right?
Yeah, which we don't have yet. Which the world doesn't have yet.
So that's what you should build.
Yeah. Very, very resource heavy.
Yeah. But I'm assuming one of the Meta or Google will probably crack it.
It's I think in best interest of governments to do it, and not in the best interest of a company to do it. Company is not. It's just that I built the tool.
True.
So if I built a knife, you can use it for chopping vegetables or killing somebody. So that's the defense I think every company would come up with.
The good thing you talk about that is actually one of our questions in our hiring process.
Which is?
I ask, what are the 100 things you can do with a knife?
Interesting.
I just want to know how they think. Is it positive, negative, indifferent?
That's a nice one.
Yeah. So just to if they're talking about all positive things, right? Like cut vegetables, do this, versus I want to kill, harm, cut. I'm like, okay. So it gives you perspective into how they think.
But I'll tell you something. I listen to a lot of crime podcasts. Does that make me like devilish, evil?
No, I don't think so. I just think you like it.
Why do you think? I'm trying to analyze why I like it.
Because of the fact that they're solving a problem. That's why I think. There's a lot of deduction.
I think it's a lot of human psyche that which we don't come across that often, right? That we
possibly. I know you. I don't think you're evil, so that's why I'm saying.
Yeah, but I think it's a little too much. Like before going to bed, that's the last thing I listen to. Yeah, and it's been happening for a while.
Maybe you just need to change to something else, I guess.
I've started podcasts that are doing more storytelling, and not just
conversations.
Not just conversation. Yeah. So, there's a book, forgetting the name, but it's basically for product managers, especially on how you should be crafting stories. And that led to me understanding what storytelling is all about. That led to me listening to this podcast.
So there's this, what's that podcast famous one? Brand Wars?
Brand Wars exist, yeah.
So that's a similar format, right? It's a sort of a storytelling thing.
Yeah.
But I don't enjoy it, somehow. I did that during COVID. I went through probably.
So the thing is, it's
series.
because they're brand. I'll give you an example of the kind of stories can simply be there was this one person who told a story about how he got a magic spoon from a kid. Okay, and it was just the kid believing that he told the kid it's a magic spoon. The kid believed it's a magic spoon, and when somebody was feeling nervous, the kid gave the spoon to another kid, and 20 years later that person still had that spoon. So it's a very simple story. It had 4-5 characters, but the way it was narrated, it got you listening to it for the entire 40 minutes of that story, right? So I think that's a craft which I don't have. I envy people who do, and I think I'm getting lowered towards listening and trying to adapt that that storytelling format. So.
Got it. So, have you watched We Crashed on Apple?
Yeah.
So, at the WeWork story?
Yeah.
So, that's adapted from a podcast.
Oh,
a storytelling podcast. They, I think, give you a preview in the beginning.
Oh, okay. So, I have to check it out.
Yeah.
But I remember seeing that show.
Yeah, it's inspired of something. So,
okay.
I recently just finished it last weekend. So
no, the podcast or the show?
The Apple show.
There's one about Uber as well.
Is it?
Yeah,
What's
I think it's on Sony Live. Do check it out. It's on Uber. Again, very kind of similar.
It's a proper show, or is it just a documentary type?
It's a proper show.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Then I'll watch it for sure.
Yeah. It's not a documentary of sorts. Yeah.
I just finished the Vince McMahon documentary.
Which is about?
Netflix on WWE, the founder who got thrown out now. Okay. 40 years he built the company and then finally he's out.
Oh, okay.
Crazy. I mean,
Netflix?
Yeah, it's on Netflix. 6 episodes, quite good. I mean, I knew a lot of it because I watched a lot of it growing up, and I was
you were a big fan of.
Yeah. Because it's ultimate storytelling, good versus bad. It's from a marketing perspective.
Oh yeah, it's
incredible. Yeah. Like how they build characters, made people fall in love with characters, and then sold merchandise.
Yeah.
Like I think now they merged with UFC to have the difference between sport and life. Collectively, they valued at 21-23 billion. Wow. So WWE went at the valuation of 9 billion. It's a wrestling business, and if you look at the origins and the story, right, it's an unregulated market because it's not a market. He made the market. And it's a crazy story. So
I'm going to check it out.
Yeah, so for someone who doesn't know anything, they'll learn everything in 6 hours.
Oh yeah.
So it's beautiful. I knew a lot
What's
of
the name
it.
of the show again? The show that you're talking about on Netflix?
It's called Mr. McMahon.
Oh, Mr. McMahon. Okay.
It's his character. It's based on that. Okay. So it's quite good.
Yeah, okay. Something to do this weekend.
Yeah. And no curiosity to go back to entrepreneurship?
I'm solving problems.
Nothing big enough that you want to get back and do it?
Haven't. I'll tell you, I'll be a little honest here. So, when I was an entrepreneur, I loved my days. I didn't realize what money could do to you, because my time was just being spent with my team, with my clients. But when I joined the corporate world, it gave me a sense of comfort and security, which I didn't know I needed till I got it. And there's a little bit of fear going back and starting again. But I think more than that, I haven't found a problem big enough worth solving. I think, if there is a problem that I recognize and nobody else is solving it, then I'll jump on board. But if I see somebody that I recognize, it's a problem and somebody else is doing it, I'd rather go join forces.
So your commitment is to the problem, solving the problem rather than who solves it.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. It's never been the rush for me. Right. Like I've never wanted to be my own boss. That's never been the chase. The chase is let's do something meaningful.
Got it. Fair.
Yeah.
I think for me it's a little different, I guess. I think I wanted to be my boss, and I tried being an employee. It's very comfortable and nice. I think I did that a little earlier than you did actually.
Yeah.
In that period, and then you immediately, I think, AppsFly happened, and
when after AppsFly got acqui-hired and I moved to ShopX, I saw money like I used to take 6 months to get in 1 month, and I was like, wow, this can be fun. And
but is that the key though? Like for example, like I think personally, I think I've reached a point where I'm making more than I did ever, and then I'm very happy also because I probably don't have
you can wear shorts
ambitions.
And walk into office.
I guess that's there. The freedom is great, but I think I'm also solving problems and going after say goals that I'm setting, but there's still a pursuit involved, I guess.
So I said that chase of not being your own boss is what I really mean by that, right? Is it's not ego, and I know that you're not running this business because of ego, right? I think if you found a good partner, you would still work with that person.
Sure.
Right? You have a good team, you're able to work with them. So there's meaning to what you're doing, 100%. And that's the drive.
Correct.
Right? It so happened to be that you were able to put people together and you were able to meaningfully deliver. The kind of, if I had to leave my cushy life and then focus on a problem, I think right now it has to be so meaningful enough that it has to impact 1 million people. Right? Like only then it's worth it. Right? It is and if it is not a problem that big, then I think somebody else will go solve for it. So for me, it is really a question about if I'm giving up what I have today, it has to be something really, really solid towards working, which I haven't found yet. But the companies that I end up working with, I realize their problems are important and millions of people already face it. And if I spend X amount of time, what is the delta of before I join the company and when I plan to leave the company, what have I actually created? I think that reflection is nice to have, feel satisfied, and then make a switch. So I'm in that part of my journey where I've realized that even if I spend X more years in my current job, it would not create a 10x impact. I can take that same amount of time and effort and improve or solve another problem at large.
Got it.
Yeah.
Very interesting. I've never thought of this way, but I guess I've gone into a zone where now I want to achieve things through people.
Yeah. So yeah.
It makes you feel a little old, but
no, I think so. I think this might be a function of a company wants to go from X to Y, and you have taken them and you have done that journey multiple times. But have you taken a person from X to Y, and how many times are you able to do that? I think that's I think it comes naturally. Like once you have learned one craft, you want to make sure that you can share that knowledge with more people so that they can then move forward, right, and push the needle.
Correct.
Same. Even
and it's very different in your 20s versus 30s.
30s, yeah.
Huge, right?
Yeah.
You don't realize it. It's subconscious. Like I went through this period because I think COVID is when I was 28. So I'm 32 now. So that I think this is a transition year, right? In
32.
between, yeah. So in between, I think those 2 years or so, I think it's a little tough because I don't know if it was because of COVID or no, but we also went through a growth journey, and you move into a more of a role where you're not hands-on, you're building systems, you're trying to enable, and then there's this quote I read which is about people think being a manager of any type, being sport or in corporate is glory and fun, but there's a lot of moments where you're alone, right? Entrepreneurship is that 10x, to be honest.
Yeah.
And those can actually be tough if you don't know how to deal with it. And a lot of young entrepreneurs fail to realize how to sort of manage it. And even managers for that matter.
Yeah.
You got to get used to it. You got to get comfortable with it. And challenge yourself. So you have one large goal you're setting for collective. And in those moments when you're alone, you need to have your own goals there too. And then when you're trying to balance the two, and I think that's what keeps people stimulated, and then you're able to sort of sustain. Otherwise, it could get a little tough.
Yeah, I think if a person doesn't feel growth themselves, that's when they plan to move to another company, right?
Yeah.
Like, so if you are able to emphasize or dedicate time towards improving a person and showing that they can grow from where they are today, I think what you're really doing is setting the foundation for the next chapter of your company, right? Like this person, what you have done for the last 5 years, if somebody else comes and does it now because you have mentored and groomed that person to do it, and that person felt growth and now sees that, oh, I have to manage these divisions which I didn't do before, that gives you more time to think about the next chapter of this thing. So this is good business, right? Like if you're hiring people and if you're able to groom them, then they are managing aspects that you were doing before, and that's good business. That's how a company moves forward. So I'm glad to hear that you are taking time and you are investing within people. I'm trying to figure out if there is like a playbook. Like, do you already have a playbook, or even because I'm also mentoring a lot of product managers and I don't have a playbook. Somebody else has created a playbook and I just take those courses or lessons. But I personally think that there needs to be a playbook for growth for an individual within a company. I recently hired a designer in my dad's company, and he's just fresh out of college. He said, I've worked in a different company. I said, okay, tell me about the company. It was a 3-member company, worked out of a tech park. They had access card. My dad's company doesn't have access card. So he's like, that was a company, sir. It had access card. I'm like, you did 3 projects there, right? And don't call that your career, right? Like that is experience that you had, well and good, but you haven't grinded. You haven't felt disappointment. Nobody has come and told you that this has to be better. You haven't lost money for the business. You haven't gained money from a business. Like you haven't gone through that journey of those emotions and how you have tackled it and all of that. So come to the company with, and I told him, the next 3 years for you, I am going to put you through hell. Okay, but every time you come out of it, you will feel that you're grown. And my dad did that to me. The environment, Fufis did that to me. But a lot of employees who join a company, they don't understand the give and take relationship, especially newcomers, right? They don't understand what it takes for you to have selected them, not selecting 5 other people, and what do they need to do to earn the seat on the table every day, every month, every year.
Yeah.
That's
so to answer the playbook question, I think I tried when I was maybe long back, 3 years into the business, and I couldn't, in all honesty, because I think I'm here by default, not by design. Tough to create a design on default, right? So that was the first problem. Later on, I think I started to recognize patterns and started to document and make something out of it. What I've realized now, 4 years on, is that I know how to get someone from 0 to 1. 1 to 10, not so much, because I feel the market's also changed. Like, for example, if a lot of them get into AI first before they learn how to
do it themselves.
Do it themselves, right? It's tough.
And that's not a...
and that's not my process, so I can't relate to it. So it's hard for me to change or to relate to understand where they are and to craft a path. But I'm learning that now.
So I think what is missing from our education is how to work. Why is integrity important? How do you collaborate? Like, how do you manage time, personal goals, company? These are aspects that I think is what needs to be taught, and especially from somebody who's done it. Teaching them the craft should come purely out of their interest, 100%. Access to information, the resources, and all that.
So that's what I do now, which is from in a 0 to 1 stage, I nudge them in the direction of what is that I did and what you could do. And I also specify a sort of a value system around it, saying these are the values that are very important. So for me, for example, I'm very big on hard work, right? Because my inherent thinking is that I'm not the smartest, I'm not the most skilled. In fact, when we started the organization, I would joke with the back then the core team, saying I don't have a quantifiable skill. If you want me to measure it and get a certificate against a skill, I don't have anything in the world that I can do that with. Right? But then there's something in the unsaid that I'm able to do. So I prioritized hard work, which I expect from the team. So, for example, the folks that work on the podcast with me, or the ones who are directly working the leadership team here, if they're not hardworking in the nature, tough. But that doesn't mean that they need to burn the midnight oil and do 16 hours a day. That's foolish. Like, and I'm against that too. So there are people. Like Saim, who's sitting here, is like he'll sit overnight tonight and edit this episode. He'll be here till 6 a.m. tomorrow. He loves doing it, but that's not sustainable. So I tell him that don't do it, right? But again, I think each person, he's young, so he has to go through that journey. So in your early 20s, I think you got to figure. But 20s, for example, is a time frame when you can actually push your limits and learn. So a lot of people come and say,
and go through that hard work grind.
Exactly, because a lot of people come and say, I work smart, so I don't need to work hard. It's the biggest load of bullshit I've heard. Right? Because if you haven't put hard work, how do you know how to work smart? Like if you haven't written if you haven't edited at least 10 videos, how do you know how to make it better? Like, because smart work is a function of that, right? So people really get that wrong. And young people here, they headline read and they get these Instagram motivational quotes, and they try to sort of play that card on you. It never works, and it plays out. The integrity thing you spoke about, that is like a little bit of a shocker to me, because I don't know, culturally growing up, we were always told to keep our word, right? And then it's an unsaid rule, but I think as children or as students, we were always told to hit, if you make a commitment, then you have to sort of deliver. And that is somewhere ingrained in the education system, I felt. Be it in terms of submitting of projects or assignments or whatever it might be. And I think there's an unsaid rule.
So you didn't give a word, they gave a word. We had to adhere to it.
Correct. I think.
And that is, I think, but what you're talking about is very powerful. What I mean by that is, if I am not, and I really strive to be, and if more people strive to be, we'll be in a better world. If we are people of our words Like if I say something and I commit and deliver, and if it's consistent, and say I'm not able to do it, I have a word with you, not on the 11th hour, not on the last minute, but I'm able to come and tell you, look, I promised you this, I can't do it, I need more time, and I'll get it done by so and so date. I think that kind of communication and intent is missing. I'll tell you, biggest last weekend, I had to go to a farm to check out that land. He's been calling me, and I thought I'm going somewhere close by, so I was planning to go travel around that area, so I thought I'll go see it. When I checked Google Maps, it was in the opposite direction. Okay, so I couldn't go meet this guy, and what I did was I just blocked him. Okay, I could have called and said, sorry, I know you. And that guy has been, he messaged me at 9:30, sir, have you left home? Said, are you coming? And I'm like, I was like, not in my mindset, I just blocked this guy. And then today I was like I was reflecting, and I'm like, if I just called and said, sorry, I know I promised you, but I didn't make it, and next time I will make it, this is what had happened, I would have been at peace. Today I'm not at peace because I blocked that guy, and that guy was just waiting for me.
So did you unblock him and speak to him?
I messaged him. I did message him.
So I know what you mean. I think I think we've all been in similar scenarios in life where we felt it's easy to walk away than to actually have that tough conversation. Same problem. I think so I figured very early on that I need inner peace. Like I like to sleep without any distractions. And very early on I figured that to have the tough conversation is easier than to, unless you don't need to ever have it. Like there have been times even for me, for example, there's been a fallout or something of that nature, and then fine, sure. Like you don't need to ever leave it. But if it requires multiple interactions, and if it's also something small that you might maybe just take a minute or something and address it and go away. It's funny, I don't know how I developed it. I think it comes from a place where I think I'm somewhere bulletproof. Like if I have a tough conversation, and if someone tells me that I've let them down or disappointed, it doesn't affect me. Knowing that helps me have any kind of bad conversation, because I think from a moral standpoint, I know I have a strong reason for why I'm doing something, and I don't need to tell anyone or prove or convince apart from put out the logical reasons. So I think it maybe comes from there. I had an incident with one of our employees. He had a notice period, but he sort of left before that. And I think he had spoken to his manager, who I think didn't have the courage to come and tell me that this person wanted to go and these are the reasons. And, so apparently he's been talking to him informally for about a month or two. So according to him, he's indicated his desire to leave much earlier, right? But he didn't put down an email and document and stuff like all that. So when it came to me, I said, yeah, dude, great. You have our blessings, but, serve the notice so that we can figure out. So for him, it's added pressure because he's already been pestering his manager for 2 months. He's asked him to like, hold off, I'll fix you, this, that, whatever. Those promises haven't been fulfilled. He's even more frustrated and he wants to go. Now it becomes a battle, right? Between HR and the others, and his manager doesn't want to let him go because work starts to suffer. Eventually he did go. So, and the day he left, the next day he asked for his exit documents. So I said, dude, listen, they need 30 days. I mean, people need to cross-check your files and whatever, and then give it to you. It's not going to happen instantly. So give it time for that. And he's like, no. He's like, oh, I have. So he automatically default. So what happened is his then boss said, no, I'm not going to sign his exit papers, or I'm not going to approve it from my end, because our policy was he has to approve, then the HR approves it, etc. So he said, I'm not going to do it. So it became a standoff on ego, right? And I'm like, listen, there's no need. So I could have really put my foot down as the head of the business and figure it out. But I said, you know what? You're mature. You work together. You're not strangers. You know each other from 2.5 years. So figure it out. So it became a problem with ego. One guy the guy is leaving thinking that he's not enabling my dreams and my desire. He's forcing me down. The other person is like, how can he disrespect me this way? Or how can he like let us down? Years, right? So I let it play out, unfortunately. And it got murky. Then he went online and he put stuff about us, the company. Then I got triggered because I said, that's no reason to do. Your problem is with an individual, not with the company per se. And a lot of other things played out. Him submitting a check saying, I'll buy myself out in terms of notice. Finance going and depositing it. He doesn't have balance.
It's a legal case.
Yeah, it's a whole host of issues, right? So it's unnecessary. So for me also, it was a learning process. Funny enough, 2 months later, I ran into him at a wedding. I had no problem. I went, shook hands with him. I said, dude, bygones be bygones. Like leave it. Like you worked with me for 5 years. I have great respect for what you do, and I want you to do well. So nothing. So I said, come whenever you're free, and like I'll sign out your exit papers. In fact, I signed it and kept it. I said, whenever you come, like take it and go, and like just cut cake if nothing else. Like do. So it became such a bad mess, and it went into the legal zone. But I had no problem in like shedding my ego down and going and saying, hey, and I apologized to him. I said, whatever, like the
I'll
team
also
put you
tell
through.
you something awesome. What I've learned: you ask somebody for feedback, or you go apologize. You can. So say I come to you and I'll be like, hey, Saanand, I'm building this product. Can I get your feedback? You're my potential customer. You tell me stuff, I take it, I go make 20% of those changes. You'll automatically like it.
Yeah.
Right? So play that as a card. What I mean by that is be tactical enough to do it. Don't do it because you don't have the answer. Okay, that's the other thing is go to your team and be vulnerable. The minute you're vulnerable, you'll find them being vulnerable. A bond can be created when you're at that stage, when egos are left. So I find I sometimes intend, like say I had a meeting, I joined 20 minutes late. Okay, and I next day I'll be like, I'm sorry to keep you waiting. I hated the fact that I made you wait. I don't like doing it. Really sorry. Right? And tell it in more than like 4 or 5 people. Now that person is not going to come late. Right? Now that person realizes how important it was for me, and I apologize in front of everybody for just being late. Now that person realizes the values that I come with, right? Like I value being on time. Now when that person doesn't adhere to it, that person also feels guilty. So I think it's a card or like a part of the playbook that should be there, where you seek feedback and you apologize in order to build that bond, in order to build that relationship. And our egos come in the way for both, right? Like how that person may not know, like you've heard about that Henry Ford quote versus Steve Jobs quote. Steve Jobs, if Henry Ford went and asked his customers what they wanted, they said faster horses, right? And he built cars, right? So he never. He's like, but what is the underlining aspect of it is that they understood what humans wanted or what people needed, right? Like the core need was really understood, and their willingness to pay for it, right? That was what they took, what you should be taking away. But that doesn't mean that the feedback doesn't exist. That doesn't mean that by going and talking to somebody, an ego clash needs to happen. Be as vulnerable and as subtle as possible, and it's only going to benefit. And sometimes I use it as a card to play with people.
So, I have another take on this, which is there was also a moment when, something of that, which I've never been in my life, but I think went into that for a period of a year probably, where when things didn't go that way with people and you had fallouts, I would get bitter. So I realized why that's happening. And the reason is simple, which is when I wanted something done, typically things would get done. After a while, when the organization grows and there's more people, different people, maybe sometimes they have different point of views and they're very strong about it. And you can't implement that thing, and then you start falling out, and then it creates this cold war, right? And it creates a friction. I've been a master at breaking it. Like I just go up, and ask them like, this is the case and whatever. After a while, the frustration builds up sometimes, and when you don't address it. And I figured the reason I was getting bitter is because I didn't know what else to feel, or I didn't know how else to solve the problem. So when you only have one modus operandi, and that fails, sometimes people stick on to it thinking, I'll keep doing the same thing and it'll get better, and it doesn't get better, then you start getting bitter. Essentially. So when I figured that, okay, I need a different approach, and I changed track and I started solving the problem, it eased out much better. So I went into that zone for 6 months when I was like, oh my God, things are not working out, these people are not getting it. It's, it's all downhill from here. It's not, and you feel demoralized. Right. And it comes from there. So I quickly learned that too.
Yeah, that's helpful.
So I think unlearning and relearning or trying something new is very important. So be it whatever profession you are at life, I guess.
When you said learning, it really struck a chord, right? I think even the listening to crime is only to understand people when they are put in situations, right? Like we don't know who we are till we have experienced different situations.
Adversity.
So give benefit of the doubt to people, like, and also I have another way of working. I trust everybody 100% all the time.
Yeah, same.
They can only break my trust.
Yeah.
There's no way to gain more trust. Like I think for a man it becomes easier, not necessarily for women, but it's okay to get so 50% chances of this person is going to hurt you, 50% chance of not, right? Like if those are the odds you're playing with, then you just move faster if you trust the person 100%. And I think even while running Foofies, like the number of projects, the clients, the team that I've disappointed, numerous sources, right? Like, and it's not like my intent was to hurt them. It was never my intent to like hurt or harm anybody. But situations happen where I couldn't deliver to a promise and stuff. And there are times when clients were upset or projects were getting delayed and they didn't know what to do. And I'm creating like downstream implications because the project's not ready, but their marketing campaign is ready. So now they have to just keep holding on to those creatives, or there was a time that the marketing would have hit the nail on the head, but it didn't. So been through a lot of that situation, and I think being honest and then telling them that I'm trying and then coming back with an alternate solution that you can actually deliver to, I think that's very important. If you just leave it as I'm sorry I can't do it, that's just, I don't think so. It's like a solution that anybody wants to hear, and that bitterness might continue. But if you go back and say that, okay, this is where I fucked up, this is where I think I can solve for it, and I need this much amount of time. If you're willing to give me the time, you give me, otherwise you can close it. But
yeah, the important thing is also that you put in the work to solve it.
Yeah.
Like for example, when people fuck up, it's because something in their process is broken.
Yeah.
So you have to change the process.
Yeah.
Right, and you have to know how to. If you don't, you have to keep trying.
Yeah.
And some people sometimes get into the habit of saying, "Yeah, I'll fix it," but then they have no idea how to fix it. But they committed.
Yeah.
Now they're fucked because you know you're gonna get exposed even more the second time.
Yeah.
So I think that is a journey of sort of either you really are working extremely hard to try every single permutation combination to figure out the outcome, or you seek help.
Yeah.
Like there's no other two ways around this.
Yeah. And sometimes seeking help is just faster. Somebody's already been there, done it.
100%.
Do you have a chamber of mentors? Like, do you have like
Zero.
5-6 people?
Zero.
Okay.
But you know, this is a funny thing. Like if I was to make a list of 5 people I learned the most from, you're one of them. I'm serious, because
but we have not had like a like you haven't come to me with saying that, Akshay, how do I solve this problem?
No.
Right, like
Because this has been discussing, exchanging thoughts. Similarly, Arman, who's been on the show, Bonomi's founder, I've learned so much from him. Just sort of function of jamming, learning. Similarly, some of the people I work with, I've learned so much of them. So I feel, and it's for a reason, I guess, because I don't think so. I think I tried finding mentors. I couldn't find people, or the ones who I found were probably not interested. So then I had to figure out learning on my own, and I just felt that was better. Also, I think it's a function of having tried a lot of things in life and failed at it. So I guess
that's
the diversity.
Learning,
you know, Conan O'Brien has this great speech at Dartmouth, I think 2011 or something. It's one of those valedictory speech. You wouldn't expect a comedian to say something profound, but he said something in that. He talks about the failure to become your perceived idol is what eventually makes you who you are. So he gives an example saying he wanted to become Letterman. Letterman wanted to become Johnny Carson. All of them failed, but they became good comedians. So, and you look at that in Indian context, you hear Tendulkar keep saying that, like, Sunil Gavaskar is a big fan of Rohan Kanhaiya, the West Indian cricketer. Wanted to be like him. Tendulkar wanted to be like Gavaskar. Virat Kohli wanted to be like Tendulkar. But all of them are so different because they didn't achieve the exact copy, but they achieved excellence regardless. So I've really taken these stories to heart.
That's a very good thought.
Yeah, so I've taken these stories to heart, and then I just felt that just like a sponge, you take stuff from people.
The importance of having a mentor board, I think if there are people out there looking after your best interest, it's hard for you to reach rock bottom. That's the safety net. Like, I have 4-5 people in the industry that no matter what, they'll have my back, and this is because of shared communication, of me being vulnerable, me sharing my wins and losses with them, and them guiding me over the last 4-5 years. So if anything is supposed to happen, I know these people will have my back. They will get me back. And I think that was the power of mentorship that I had.
I think I'm not vulnerable by choice. Because I think if you think you are, then you are. I'm one of those
Yeah.
people who believes in that.
My favorite quote, actually.
Really?
If you think you can, or if you think you can't, either ways you're right.
Exactly. So I
Yeah,
guess if
but-
you think to yourself that you're, so there are stages and things in which you show in. So I feel life has a lot of macro moments and micro.
Hmm.
And much like wins and losses in life, they are also macro and micro,
Hmm.
right? So in moments you can express these things, but at a larger level, I think I have less thoughts.
Correct.
Like I might be reading like 3 books at once and listening to 2 podcasts a day, but if you ask me what I want to do 3 months from now, it's the same. Nothing is different. So that difference will come inherently by the nature of what you do on a daily basis.
So tell me something, okay? Like, thousands of years ago, there was not enough content for people to consume. They spend most of the time thinking. And now we are in a world where we barely have to think, especially through AI, even lesser, right? We are consuming so much content and putting it into our brain. But do you think that we are thinking enough? Do you think that you are putting enough time in just thinking through your decisions, thinking through the second order of your decisions? Like, is there enough thought behind your thinking?
I think today a lot of people overthink.
Overthink.
Yeah, massive overthinking
But
on
their
everything.
overthink is what they think is overthinking is not overthinking.
Yeah, it's not, but it's overthinking without action. What you're talking about is balance between thought and action, or thinking and action, right? Like you have to do something about it. I guess I think the right amount is what I feel. Like I generally, I'm not a kind of person who overthinks. But to come back on that point that you said, yeah, true. So I've been trying to get into meditation.
Same.
Right.
We should do something.
Yeah. So my dad is into pranic healing and Reiki and all. He's certified and everything. So he tried to get me into it when I was 7. I really didn't like it. Then he forced me a little bit. Then he realized that I'm growing a sort of vehement hate against it. So he let me go. And then I've never meditated. But I got into the basics of it when I was young. So I know what it's about. Now, because I'm naturally curious, because I'm reading history and stuff, I'm getting into it. So there's one theory floating around which I'm really like intrigued by it now, which is dolphins are the only animals or mammals in this entire planet that probably use a larger percentage of the brain to process and to sort of do things, right? I think there's some stat, they use 20%, 30% of their brain. Humans use an average of 5 or something like that, or 10 something. It's very little. So 90% of our brain probably is not being used right now.
So
right?
that was it's a myth, but I'm getting your point.
So
But
what's the right one? If you can fact check
it's
me
not.
on this.
Our entire brain is being used.
Okay, but
it is. So remember, there's also this right side and left side brain. All of that is like debunked.
Okay.
Currently, we need our entire brain to be working. So if you just take one part of your brain and remove it, something is going to get screwed up.
100%.
Okay, so that only shows that like 100% of your brain is required. But I do understand what you're trying to get to, right? It's how much of cognitive load are we processing in order to drive a particular function. You can be doing 100 things, but you're just doing it to keep yourself busy. It's a inward looking thing. Like you might want to. I personally would have read a podcast while listening to a podcast and playing a game on my phone. Is just to keep my mind mentally stimulated, but not really making it think, like playing chess for 2 hours, right? Where you're completely focused on the next move to next move to next move. That kind of thinking, I think our generation and our generations after us are doing far lesser than before. And I don't know where that's going to lead.
Yeah, so great. So I think my theory somewhere is right, even though my stats are wrong, right? Which is, I think there's a lot more potential to use the brain probably. Multiple ways in which you can explore. One obviously is psychedelics, but I'm not into chemicals, so I've never been intrigued by it, don't want to do it. I'm too scared to mess up my brain. That's my thought process. The other option, of course, is like figuring out other things to go deeper into thought, right? Maybe. Whenever I've meditated, I felt good. So there's something in it.
Right.
And you can go deeper into your feelings that you probably otherwise don't have, and realization can be better. And I've seen people do that for 2, 3, 4 hours.
Yeah.
And I'm sure people are doing
40 minutes is my max.
Yeah.
Right?
So I'm sure people are doing more than that, right?
Yeah.
So there's something in it which, if there's a reason, if our religion and the ancient ways of life talks about it as a fundamental thing, maybe it's a design because you didn't have anything to do back then, so maybe that was a sort of
like
a activity.
you have to look inward.
Yeah, maybe you don't need to do it, to be honest. Like we have everything. Today's
Maybe.
world is better. You never know, right? But only way to do that is to try it out for yourself and figure. So I want to do that. So I'm getting into that.
I have a friend who can help. I'll connect you.
Sure.
So, you should, in fact, he's a philosopher. You should have him on the podcast. He's right now working for an AI company called Sarthi.
Perfect.
I met him in a backpackers hostel, and he's from Oxford in London. He was working in an NGO in South Africa, worked there for like good 4-5 years, and then he wanted to go meet some monks in India to get some answers. Okay, and in that journey, I met him in a backpackers hostel. We spoke for 4.5 hours the first time I met him, like continuous, just back and forth, and never had when we left, like, he gave me such a nice hug, like, I felt like I made a friend. We stayed in touch. This happened in 2017. He's now in Bangalore, met him last week. Fabulous person. And if you ever want to talk about, he meditates. He's meditated for like hours and hours. He's read all kinds of philosophy, has his own theories. Just an interesting person to talk to. In fact, you can make him sit in front of anybody and they'll end up having like a conversation they've never had before. So, really nice person to talk to.
Interesting. Yeah, definitely. A combination of philosophy and AI is amazing.
Yeah.
Happy to explore.
Yeah. Perfect person.
There's this quote that my head of creative told me yesterday. He said, it's a quote he read somewhere, but he said, until you're 40, everything in life is just research. It's from a very creative lens because typically creative people mature after that. But I thought it was a good sort of quote for life too. You can actually take it off.
Why 40? I'm going to be approaching 40 soon and I don't want to think that.
How far away are you from it?
4 years now.
Oh, that's good.
No, it's that you don't have time flies.
No, of course. But it's just a number. It doesn't matter.
But mentally, I still play FIFA and like doing stuff that a kid does.
You know, it's funny. I was telling this to somebody too, saying that I have almost the same interests and habits that I had when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
Or a little late after that, right? And of course, I've got deep into problem solving, business, etc., which I was not into when I was younger. But that's a layer that's added on to things. But my core, I like football. I like watching cricket. I play sport, like working out. It's all from within that zone. So, I guess
it sticks. I think that's the good parts of life that we keep holding on to.
Yeah. I think that's important too because at the core, if you're the true mold, right, then I think it's easy
to. Where else would you feel competitive?
Feel competitive?
Yeah. If you're not playing, like say, FIFA or you're playing sports with people. But otherwise, in your life, where else do you feel competitive?
At business, when you do win deals and stuff like that, maybe.
Okay.
Problem solving is depends. I mean, sometimes you really don't know who you're competing against in the kind of work we do. So that's a bit of a challenge. At the same time, I also think it's not right to get consumed by it. So balance is important. So hence not that frequent. Otherwise, I guess tough to actually point out. A lot of problem solving is competition within. No? So it's not as.
But also it's a shared problem. I think at least for me it is a very shared problem.
It is.
Like it's not just my problem, but when you're one-on-one playing tennis against somebody and it's like a competitive game, I just think the right juices flows and the body feels much better. You're pushing your body. And I don't think if it wasn't for a sport, I don't know when and where I would feel that way.
I think it's the equivalent of hunting, no? From the early man days.
That or hunger, right? Like either you catch something or you're hungry. Yeah.
True. The same thing. I think now food comes easily so we don't really have to hunt. So I think it's those goals we chase up and make. I truly believe life has no purpose. You make it up. So that is interesting.
But at least I think there needs to be something to move towards. Otherwise, you're just wasting oxygen on this planet.
Yeah, no doubt.